Welcome to the Cross-Cultural Psych Podcast with Professor Paul Youngbin Kim. This podcast features conversations on the intersection of psychology, culture, and faith with renowned scholars in psychology and related fields. And now, here is Dr. Paul Youngbin Kim.
Hello, everyone. Thank you always for listening to my podcast and engaging the content. One question that I pose to all guests is, what advice do you have for those who are just starting out their careers? For your benefit, I've combined all responses from the first 12 episodes into a single file. The advice presented in this video clip are all from really wise and thoughtful and experienced scholars who are doing their best to improve their teaching. And I hope that you'll be encouraged and inspired to do the same in whatever setting that you might be in. Please enjoy the video.
What does the institution believe? What is the institution promoting? And what are some of the expectations of the faculty? Within Christian higher education, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on morals and ethics amongst faculty. You just want to be privy to that information. So really research and analyze just what the requirements are, or what the expectations are going to be for you just to be seen as a good standing member of that place. After being on this side for 3 years now, I wish I had interrogated a little bit more, challenged a little bit more.
Be prepared for not everybody, not all of your colleagues, not all of the faculty at the institution to be in with your understanding of ethnicity, race, culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the intersections with Christianity, with our faith. One of the very first things that I was exposed to coming in as a junior faculty member, the very first email I get is somebody going on how social justice shouldn't be taught at a Christian institution. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? I remember reaching out to our department chair at that time and being like, is this a commonly held view? Because if it is, I need to know. Because I need to figure out what the heck my plans are moving forward, because I really need to question whether this is where I need to be. And that was a startling moment. I remember being rocked. In that moment, I was just like, man, whoever sent that email shares my faith. How can you share my faith and think that we shouldn't, as Christian faculty members, be talking about social justice? So definitely one of my pieces of advice would be, don't come in expecting everything to align with your beliefs as it pertains to topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I would say one thing is to focus on becoming excellent in whatever is one's field. So if you're going to be a biologist, to the extent that time allows, be a great biologist. Really focus on getting to know your field, becoming an expert in your particular research area and making a contribution to that. And then at a later stage of one's career, you may have opportunities. At least this is what happened to me. I didn't start out to become a communicator of psychological science. I didn't set out to write and think about the intersection of psychological science and faith. Those opportunities came to me later once I had credibility established in my field. And so maybe the place to begin is by pursuing excellence in one's discipline. And then other opportunities will follow. And as you mature, then you have opportunity to think more deeply about the connections between one's field and big ideas in other realms.
I don't like the word balance, but I think there's some sort of understanding, when is the institution ready, able to move at the pace I hope to and the team I'm working with, and matching that with what is sustainable and good for me and my community. And it's sort of like this process. So, I mean, it's sort of similar to when you work with clients, and therapists always say, don't work harder than your client, because then you get frustrated, you get burnt out. I think it's similar with institutions. And so it's that fine line of caring deeply about the health of your institution, especially if you work for a Christian institution. You know all of your colleagues and administrators, we all care about the same things, right?
Yeah.
How it's done can be frustrating. The pace at which you want to move can be frustrating, and not to take it personally. and to have a thriving life outside of your academic life,
Yeah.
which I am still working on, critically important.
The answer to me to so many of these questions, like about faith integration, DEI integration, is like, we all have too many blind spots to go at this alone. And so like where there is really great faith integration, I think there's meaningful interdisciplinary collaboration. Where there's really good DEI integration, I also think there's really good, meaningful, like interdisciplinary collaboration. And it's so hard to do that well. It's time consuming. It's something that challenges and grows you as a person. And I think that's really important to be willing and ready to embrace. But I'm so proud of the collaborative work that I've done, because I think it's exponentially better than anything that I could have put out myself, and speaks hopefully more truthfully about, people's experiences as well.
It's really great to look for mentorship, to look for colleagues and peers that you can run with. And from a purely kind of research, writing and publishing perspective, take a co-authorship strategy. If you can find people you can run with and co-author a bunch of papers with them, they can bring you in some of their papers, you bring them in some of the papers, and we all publish together. Then it becomes a context for friendship. It's not just like, I want to pad my CV. It's more like, I want to spend more time with my friend Paul. I want to catch up with them. And this is the excuse that brings us together. And, we do happen to benefit from publishing, but it becomes more of a relational endeavor rather than building my kingdom kind of endeavor. And then taking that approach, I've found it actually is more productive. You actually get more done at the end by taking that relational approach, where the goal is friendship and relationship and everyone's success, not just my own.
Yeah.
And we'll actually end up getting farther.
People say it to me all the time, and I experienced it too. My international students, they come here,
Yeah.
they're not just learning Korean culture, but it's like, if you ask a fish in water, how's the water? The fish will say, what's water?
Yeah, right.
They don't see or recognize their own environment until they leave it. So by coming to Korea, you're not only learning a new culture, you're not only learning a new people, you're not only realizing the great diversity of life, of values, but you're also learning more about yourself, and you're learning more about your own culture and where you come from through that comparison. And I think that's also a marvelous thing, that if we have the opportunities, because 100 years ago, such opportunities were very few and far between. Right. It wasn't everybody that could get on a boat and travel to the other side of the world. And if you did, the conditions were very, very difficult. If you have the opportunity, I would encourage anybody to reach out and grab that, because of what it can do to your life.
Hold on to the integrity of your discipline, in terms of in psychology, the research methodology and what you're doing, do it with integrity. And also then read theologians and biblical scholars when you can. Make some friends with people over in, the Department of Religion or the Department of Theology, or if that's not something that if you're in Christian higher education, there should be those people on your campus. If you're not in Christian higher education, you might have to reach out some more to find people from other communities, other schools, but make friends with them and ask them questions. I mean, I think that there's a lot that we can share and a lot of ways we can help each other.
Really try to understand what your institution requires of you and wants of you, so you know what you need to do to meet those standards, whether it's scholarship and research or service in university and teaching, to know what's expected and the things that matter and the things that don't matter. Because I think sometimes it's easy to try and do everything, and then later you learn that, the things I was doing don't even really matter for me to get a promotion.
The beautiful thing about having a psychology degree is that there is no field in which a clinical psychology PhD is not going to be an asset to you, right? This is not like a doctorate in architecture where the skills are so specific that they're more or less useless outside of their given field. I've had a string of non-traditional jobs since graduation, and in every single one, the ability to listen well and empathize and ask thoughtful questions and understand human behavior has been a godsend, a huge gift. It's only been an asset to me. So I think with that knowledge, I would just encourage folks to just expand your imagination, however possible, into what your options are, because I feel like my options when I started grad school were like, I could be a therapist, I could teach, I could do research, and that was kind of it. But there are so many ways in which you can use this degree. And now my peers are using them all in just such interesting and cool ways. I have friends who are working for Fortune 500 companies doing employee wellness. I have friends who are in administration. I have friends who are supervising. I have friends who are teaching and doing research and being a therapist. These skills are so applicable across such a wide range of fields that I would really encourage folks to just think really broadly about how they want to use their degree. The other piece of advice is maybe kind of related. Therapy is so important, and I no longer practice as a therapist, but I'm still an evangelist of therapy. It's also really hard to sustain as a full-time job. And so I would encourage folks as much as possible to, if being a full-time therapist gives you life, absolutely do that. But also think about your career as a marathon and not a sprint. And I know so many people who just burned out so quickly. And so so maybe this advice, I think, goes along with what I said before, where there's so many ways you can use the degree. Think about how you can leverage that degree to serve people and care for people, but also you don't have to do it in the form of full-time therapy, high burnout, et cetera, et cetera. There's other ways that you can leverage it. And then in terms of the non-traditional career, this is a much bigger, this maybe applies, I think, beyond Christian psychologists, but I feel like my career has taken me to places and brought me into work that is so much more, it's meaningful and terrifying and different. Doing the non-traditional thing is scary because there's just the path is not clear, right? And I feel like by the time you're at the end of a Christian or a psychology PhD, you have so many very clear steps, and stepping into the unknown can be terrifying. But if you are open to it, the possibilities of interesting work are generally like limitless with a degree like this.
I would say see each student as an individual and wake up excited about teaching a class. If you are finding that you are not excited about teaching a class, you need to ask yourself why. Because if you're not excited, your students are going to feel it.
I would say that there's a lot of impact to be made. I will say that Christian higher ed is unique, and there is such rich opportunity there to make a difference and represent something different. I would argue that one of the privileges we had teaching at a Christian private institution is the small classes, right? So the small teacher to student ratio, and you really get to know your students. I remember having a student who transitioned from a larger institution in our area and saying that, wow, I never knew this was possible. I never knew that I could be in a space where the professor sees me, where the professor knows me by name, where I can message the professor, where the professor cares about my lived experience.
Thank you for listening to the Cross Cultural Psych podcast with Dr. Paul Youngbin Kim. We hope this content was meaningful. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to write a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, let us know what you'd like to see covered in future episodes. We hope you will join us next time.